Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Red Path. I'm Jamie, and today we're going to do a detachment focus on the Vessels of Wrath. Now, this is the Grotmas Christmas detachment that was released, so it's probably got the least amount of change, kind of new ways to play compared to the other detachments, except maybe Berserker Warband. But we're still going to look into it and see how it's going to work with the way that the Codex is going to play, because there are some significant changes. Um, we're not going to spend a whole amount of time going over the enhancements and stuff, because you should be fairly familiar with those, but we will kind of touch on a few details. But let's just quickly break it down. So this is the detachment with the Wrath of Khorne as the detachment rule, which allows 3 units, 8-bound berserkers, terminators, and exalted 8-bound, and unnamed characters to gain the become a vessel of wrath, which allows them to get a third blessing for free. This is fairly significant. We used to use it more to guarantee advance and charge, and I think the way we're going to play this now is typically, assuming the dice favor us, right, we'll be picking sustain and probably the 6-inch pile-in as our core 2 army wide buffs. And then we'll use the third blessing vacancy on our 3 units, our 3 go turn units. Will either be lethal or dev wounds to just amp up the violence of those chosen units, depending on what you're going into. If you're going into high toughness things, it'll be lethals. If you're going into infantry, it'll be dev wounds. Typically, you don't always want both of those at the same time, just because of the breakpoints and what they favor. But yeah, so that rule is essentially the same. Enhancement wise, really, this is kind of taken a bit of a soft nerf. Arch Slaughter is still absolutely great. I think close to an auto take in this detachment. That is, of course, the bearer will get an extra AP, and then if they are a vessel or attached to a squad that's become a vessel, they will gain an extra damage as well. Great for the Mo, awesome on the Slaughterbound, very good on the Foot Demon Prince as well. You still got Vox Diabolus, which is gain a CP. I think you don't need that anymore, because yeah, I mean, it's an option, but I think the Mo just does it better if you're bringing that. And if you're bringing a Demon Prince, you're helping your CP economy by reducing. It's not a bad one. I just don't think it's as useful as it was. Avengers Crown, fight on death on a 2+. Unless it's points, I don't see you taking this. Just we've already got fight on death on 4s. There is some jank you can do that. Like, let's say you put this on a Demon Prince, and you've got fight on death up. You can roll for the 4+ fight on death. And if that fails, you then get to roll for the 2+ fight on death, or vice versa. But yeah, I still don't think we're taking it too often. Gateways to Glory. This is the frustrating one, because this was a great, and it is very good. It allows your Juggernaut Lord and your Demon Prince or Demon Princes to go through walls and units. But I don't necessarily think that we're automatically taking a Demon Prince now in Vessels of Wrath. It's very good, but I don't know it's an auto take like it was in previous, the way we would build our lists. And the Juggernaut basically gets this anyway. If you're planning on taking a solo Juggernaut, sure. But I don't know if we're going to go there. Okay, let's talk about the stratagems quick, because again, not much has changed. But another good thing about this detachment is all the strats are 1 CP. So Aspire to Infamy is, of course, where you gain an extra AP and strength on Jackals or Berserkers. Not the character that may be leading the Berserkers, unfortunately, but it's still a very strong strat. Overshadowed by None is where your infantry, mounted or Demon Prince, can reroll wounds against monsters and vehicles. This is an incredible strat. I think this will be one we use a lot with this. Gory Dedication is the sticky on kill in the fight phase. It's fine. Punish the Craven, a really good one. When infantry or a demon prince, when an enemy tries to fall back from an infantry or demon prince model, they have to take a desperate escape test, and if they're a vessel, subtract one from that. It's just a good one. Not as powerful as it was with the kind of jank you could pull off with the old Exalted 8 bound, but it's still a good thing to have to kind of like make people wary about whether they're going to fall back. Meet Force with Force is Blood Surge. Now, this one is probably going to need an FAQ because the way it reads is your unit can make a Blood Surge move. To do so, roll 1d6. So it's the old Blood Surge. That's what it's referring to, right? Which is specifically a rule on the Khorne Berserkers datasheet. In the 8 bound detachment, 8 bound gain it as their detachment rule. However, this it specifies at the end one of the extra criteria is if you do this on a Khorne Berserker unit or a unit that's a Vessel of Wrath, but whatever, you can re-roll the d6 because you can't typically re-roll a Blood Surge dice unless you've got like a Mo attached, I believe allows you to re-roll it now. But the problem with this is if I use this stratagem on Berserkers because I want that re-roll, right, which is what I would do before when I would play Berserkers in Vow, am I using re-rolling the d6 and still gaining the +2, or am I just getting a d6 blood surge, which is the old rule, which is what this is referring to? So I just think it needs an FAQ. I think it should just allow, if it's Berserkers, they get 2 plus d6, anyone else gets d6, right? But anyway, it's just something to think about. Maybe check with a TO if this is something, if you're bringing a Vow list to a tournament. Then finally, Brazen Contempt is -1 to wound on vessels. And if it's not a vessel, then it's just -1 to wound in shooting if their strength is higher than your toughness. So that's an overview of the sort of core rules. Now, previously with vessels, your lists would mostly we would have a demon prince on foot giving out the aura of involves, and we'd have 2 or 3 Exalted 8 bound bricks, the 6-man bricks, because what that did was it allowed you to have a very strong, robust defensive and offensive unit and multiples of them, where you would just be throwing on as many sort of like buffs that you needed at the time, whether that was through stratagems or whether it's through the third blessing. That doesn't exist anymore. Exalted 8 bound are still they're still good, they're still fine. Let's put it like that. A little bit overcosted for sure, and nowhere near as good as nowhere near as offensively capable as they were, and nowhere near as defensive as they were because they had the inherent feel no pain, and they would be getting a 4-up invul from the Demon Prince. The Demon Prince no longer gives an invul, and they no longer have a feel no pain at all. So I don't think we build our lists in the same way. I will actually venture to guess the best way to build a Vessel's Wrath now, a Vessels of Wrath list, is to sort of focus on strong MSU in the form of some at least three. Well, not at least. You can only have 3 units of regular 8 bound. Probably throwing in one squad of 3 exalted is fine, I think, and then berserkers on top of your core, because you're going to bring your goremongers, spawn jackals, which leads us into talking about the sort of key units. Kind of already started it really, but the key units for this list. Okay, so where before the Demon Prince was almost required, I don't know that a Demon Prince is required now. I think it's still a good choice. You're not wrong for taking it. I just don't know if it lends itself as well, because whilst having that aura to reduce CP is still good, and the Demon Prince is very good, and with something like Arch Slaughterer is going to be incredibly killy. He's not an auto take. He's not the first thing you put in your list. I think you have to have some strong consideration on how wide you want this list to be for yourself. Similarly, where Exalted 8 bound were just you spammed them pretty much as you could. Not so much. I still think like the boys we've kind of talked about the Exalted 8 bound, and I'm fairly convinced that having 1x3 is not a bad choice for your list. Yeah, they're not as good, but that rapid ingress threat is still there, and they're having something dedicated anti-tank in your pocket is very good. I think for the core units of this is your 8 bound, whether 3x3. I think you can go 2x3 and 1x6. I don't know that you want 2x6. They don't have the resilience, even where you can put -1 to wound on them and obviously attach a slaughterbound to heal. I still think they'll crumble too quickly. But I do think 1x6 is is a decent choice because you can stick it in a Land Raider or something. I think Berserkers are still very good in this. I don't know that you need to attach them. Having Khorne available, if you've got Khorne, you probably want to stick them with Berserkers, but it's not necessary. 10 Berserkers do fine because they have, the ability for three offensive buffs or, two offensive buffs in the pile in, and you can give them the extra AP and strength. So they go up to that strength 5, which is very important against like Marines and things like that. And playing with like the Rhino disembark shenanigans and stuff, they're very good in this list, I think, or in this faction. So really, it's the way I feel about vessels is you want multiple squads, small squads of 8 bound, maybe one or two 10-man berserkers, a couple of slaughter bound. Um, and those are going to be the key parts of your army. You're definitely going to want two Forge Fiends or two good shooting support units, right? That was always a thing with vessels. You needed that little bit of firepower, and it's typically brigands. I believe that was the Brosy or DeBrosy, I can't remember, but two brigands was very common because it just did what you needed. It would clear screens and it would offer that anti-tank that you needed sometimes. I think Forge Fiends are better now than brigands. I think they'll do a lot of work for you in this. And once you've got your core, two Forge Fiends, two, maybe three spawn, jackals, just one jackals, and goremongers. That's where you're going to figure out what you've got. What have you got models wise available, right? What can you actually physically put on the table? I think you're leaning into 8 bound. I think this is weirdly an 8 bound attachment that may do 8 bound slightly better than the oiled up Dara Legion. Um, which we need to come up with a good name for that, for the what is it? The Slaughterbound or something. So anyway, now let's talk about some key combos. This is a difficult one because I haven't actually used this faction yet on the table, and I've been having a hard time really trying to sort of get my head around it. It's really difficult to solve Vessels of Wrath. It's not really now uh, empowered to do the kind of haymaker punches that the old vessels would do. You would sling that 6 man up and just kind of tank as much as you could. Then you would have your other hammers coming up, and you just keep like whatever's strong enough is where you're throwing your extra blessing on. I do think our lethality in this is going to be very solid. Like I mentioned earlier on, your army-wide buffs will typically be the 6-inch pile-in and sustain, just giving everyone that absolutely fine. And then throwing on that specialized, whether lethal hits or the dev wounds on the three sort of key assault units, just to sort of up their lethality, and you can give one of them reroll wounds. And I think attaching the slaughterbound to either a 3-man 8 bound or the 3-man exalted and just pumping them up that way, you get some combos there with the reroll wounds, right? So whether it's, I don't think you would need reroll wounds against vehicles and monsters on exalted 8 bound because they're already critting on 3, but on an 8 bound unit with a slaughter bound, and he's done his dev wounds, Super Saiyan mode, having that ability to reroll wounds, that's really powerful. You're doing an awful lot of damage, especially if that slaughterbound has got arch slaughter on him. Same for a demon prince. You've got a nice bit of synergy there. You've got the dev wounds, and you can do the reroll wounds into the tougher targets because as good as Forge Fiends are, they're not really dedicated anti-tank. And there isn't enough of that in a typical World Eaters list, it seems like at the moment. We have to rely on sort of like using our shooting, using maybe grenades or tank shock, and then going in for a kill with like a 3-man 8 bound or Khorne and some berserkers or something. And sometimes you may have to overcommit and you kind of get dragged down in the trade war there. But yeah, so like for the key combos, it's difficult. There's no real transport shenanigans in this. There's no real like rapid ingress trickery you can do. It's quite an honest attachment. It's quite violent, and I think it does provide the strongest MSU capability. Arguably, Berserker Warband is just slightly better at everything than everyone else, but I think this one really does favor it. And the reason I say that is I'll go into a list archetype. I should probably have had this prepared, but it will be up on the screen now. So this is probably where I would start with Vessels of Wrath right now. Okay, so you're going to start with two Slaughterband. One of them is going to have Arch Slaughterer. You're going to get 3 units of 2 Chaos Spawn, um, and you're going to have Khorne the Betrayer, and you're going to have 10 Berserkers, and you're going to have a Land Raider, and you're going to have 2 Forge Fiends. You're also going to have a squad of Jackals and Goremongers. Then you're going to have a squad of Exalted 8-bound, 3-man, a squad of 3-man, regular 8-bound, and then finally a squad of 6 8-bound. This is 2,000 points on the nose. And let me kind of talk you through what I'm thinking here. So I don't need to touch the Jackals, Goremongers, and Spawn, right? They're your chaff, they're your trade pieces, skirmishers, uh, screening, whatever you need them to be. They're your utility pieces. You've got really strong fire support here with the 2 Forge Fiends and the Land Raider. And Land Raiders are sort of like cropping up in a lot of lists right now. They're just very solid. They offer really good anti-tank. And this is probably one of the better detachments for them because you do have access to the -1 to wound for things that are stronger, have higher strength than they are tough, and they're T12. So I don't know, I'm thinking like guard and tower, things like that, that will have quite a plethora of strength 14 plus shooting. So just having that ability, because you can combo it with smoke, so you can be -1 to hit and -1 to wound. Now that's not always going to be relevant, but it does make you significantly tougher, right? You can then have the Slaughterbound, either of them, but probably the one with the Arch Slaughterer, pair up with the 6-man 8-bound if you want and go inside the Land Raider. Now, this would only be done if you were going into, say, Knights and they had, 2 or 3 of the full size Knights, or I don't know, things Monster Mash maybe where you need something that's absolutely going to kill what it touches. If you were going into say War Dogs or something, because this has got 2 Slaughterbound, you could attach one to the both of the 3-man, the Exalted and the regular 3-man 8-bound, and then you've got 3 units which will one-shot a War Dog under normal circumstances, um, quite handily, especially because they're going to have sustained and lethal up pretty much guaranteed. You've also got Khorne and 10 Berserkers in there. So you're able to utilize that extra AP, giving your Berserkers strength 5, -2 with potential for reroll wounds fully, even though they're already rerolling ones. Um, Something that I think is key to this list here, it's something that hasn't really been talked about, and I think this is just because there hasn't been many games played yet. But the 8-bound, they offer +1 to hit, right, against infantry or against non-monsters and vehicles within 6 inches. But if that unit is under half strength, you also get +1 to wound, which is very powerful on something like Berserkers with -2. Again, it is only against infantry, but like the way Death Guard is tanky as they are, because you're still wounding them on 5s and you can't reroll wounds against them. But if you can get wounded them on 4s with reroll 1s because of Khorne, you're starting to do some real damage into something like that because you're hitting that invul with a -2, you're wounding them on 4s, rerolling 1s, you're hitting them probably on 2s, but I'm not entirely sure what Death Guard does with their -1s to hit and stuff like that. Haven't played against them yet, but nevertheless, even if they are debuffing you, you are at least reapplying some level of consistency. You've got good skirmishing in this list, which I think is going to be pretty consistent through any World Eaters list, quite frankly. The Land Raider offers you significant anti-tank supported by the Forge Fiends. You've got the Super Saiyan Slaughterbound in there with Arch Slaughterer, pairing up with whoever he needs to. And if you're going into something like Eldar or something with lots of small squads that you can pretty much kill with anything in the list, you just keep them unattached. So you can just have, a whole bunch. You can have Khorne the Berserkers and a Slaughterbound inside the Land Raider, and you pop them all out, and then they go off in 3 different directions. Or you can put a couple of 8-bound squads in there or something. Just lots of options. But yeah, I just want to go back. Like I said, this is probably one of the hardest attachments to figure out right now. I haven't done it, obviously. This is kind of where I've gone through about five iterations of vow lists, sort of like fine tuning them, and I kind of then I rebuild it, and then I see, okay, what was really working there. I think something like this, it's just a core kind of take all comers list. Um, it does okay, head, thinking about it mentally into most kind of archetypes. It can punch up, it can, be handle MSU, it can screen itself okay, it can play the missions okay, it can deal with anti-tank, it can definitely deal with hordes and stuff. Maybe not like full 200, 300 guardsmen or whatever the stupid list is, but it can definitely do some work. Um, but yeah, anyway, I know this is a bit of a short video than the last few, but again, Vessels of Wrath, again, hard to solve. I want to know your thoughts. Like, what am I missing here? Should I have made room for the Demon Prince? Is a Demon Prince necessary in this? Is there something crazy I'm missing? Like, do somehow Wing Demon Princes shine in this detachment? Should I be reconsidering Brigands again? Like, are they offering something that the Forge Fiends quite aren't? Maybe that allows you to drop the Land Raider, put in a Rhino instead, and you sort of free up that 150 points for an extra unit of something. I don't know. It's a tough one. This is a detachment I'm probably not going to be playing super early on. I'm definitely going to be getting my reps with Gortrak, and I want to play the Khorne Demonkin, and then probably drift into Berserker Warband for a little while as well. But I do have a soft spot for Vessels of Wrath, and that's mostly because it sort of like broke the monotony for us World Eaters players around Christmas time, gave us something to sink our teeth into. Um, okay, I think that about wraps it up for this one. Nothing else to say, but yeah, just let me know in the comments what units you think really shine in this, okay? And you'll notice I didn't put background music in this. Hopefully that's okay. I'm sure it'll generate complaints for some other reason this time around. All right, folks, until the next one, stay healthy, stay safe, and kill mean burn.